Hey there guys, what is going on? We are back with what will hopefully be our last assault rifle tier list for Cold War Season 3, and that includes the reloaded patch of course. The weapons did receive a little bit of an update with the most recent balance patch in terms of their bullet velocity, and some of the barrels got changed as well, so there's a little bit of a different shake-up with this particular list. But of course, there are some absolutely insane assault rifles in the game right now, especially something that we're about to talk about very, very soon. But just before we do get into it here, make sure you do hit that subscribe button with those notifications turned on. I do really massively appreciate it. It really does help me out. Of course, we are looking for about 180 subscribers to hit 5,000, so that would be an absolutely massive, massive goal for me if we could get there. So if you could help me out, that would be huge. Anyway, let's just jump straight into our tier list here with our explanations. We do have a couple more or a slightly different tier list to how we have presented these previously, as I felt we needed something a little bit extra here. Starting at the bottom this time, we do have the NAR tier. This is the absolute worst weapons in the game. You would not use this over literally anything else. Then we move up to the situational tier. These are weapons, of course, that can only be used in certain situations. They do struggle at sometimes longer distances, have too much recoil, and so on. It's pretty self-explanatory, most of these tiers. The middle tier is the viable tier, which is weapons that are definitely usable, not the tip top of the meta, but weapons that you can definitely get some kills with and have a fun time with. They're not the best, but not the worst. Meta kind of is a little bit better than those weapons that are just acceptable. They are closer to the tip top of the meta than some of these other weapons. They do still have flaws, but for the most part, these are very, very good weapons in this game. Then we have the meta. These are the weapons that are very, very powerful in this game. The ones that are, of course, the most efficient and the best killing weapons in the game. These are the tip top. And then, well, the actual tip top here is the broken weapons. These are weapons that are completely busted. Weapons that probably shouldn't have been buffed in certain cases. Probably weapons that are a little bit too strong. And that is, in this case, is our first weapon on this list. We are talking about the AK-47. In my opinion, this thing is broken. It's absolutely ridiculously powerful weapon in this game right now. As of the most recent balance patch, which was the Season Reloaded patch, of course, that did receive a bullet velocity increase, taking its bullet velocity up to about 750-ish meters per second, which is an absolutely ridiculous number for something like this, which was already one of the best assault rifles in the game without this buff. Then they made this easier with the hit detection. You get ridiculous bullet velocity values now. There's a different barrel option that you might be able to take, giving you absurd bullet velocity, great hit detection, but this thing just absolutely shreds people. So the AK-47 is, of course, going in the broken tier. As you can see, this thing is absolutely insane in this game right now. You get like a 4-shot kill, you get a ridiculous time to kill, of course, out to 70-ish meters, and you just get great hit detection, excellent stats across the board. This is a fantastic weapon in this game right now. Try the AK-47 out. It is easily the best assault rifle and one of the best Cold War guns right now in Season 3 Reloaded. Next, we do have the Fara 83 here, and again, this is a weapon that is very, very good and actually did receive some balance changes again in that most recent balance patch. We did also receive a bullet velocity increase to this, giving us a bullet velocity value of about 1450 meters per second, meaning this thing does have absolutely ridiculous hit detection alongside the AK-47. Of course, it is better than the AK-47 in terms of that hit detection, but it does struggle at other stats as well. The attachment options aren't ideal. I think you actually have to run 8 attachments on this thing to get the most out of it, which also does detract from some of the ideal playstyles of this particular weapon. You can't run that perk greed, which I really do prefer. If a weapon, in my opinion, only needs 5 attachments, it is absolutely insanely powerful in this game, so just keep that in mind here. I think the Fara 83 is still a very, very good weapon. It does have a 1.4 times headshot multiplier, which some of the other weapons in this category do not have, which is really strong. So you are still going to get a 5-ish shot kill most of the time. You're going to get 300 millisecond time to kill out to 65, 70 meters or so. So again, this is still a very, very good weapon in this game, and I think it belongs in the meta tier. This is a very, very strong assault rifle still. I don't think it's broken or anything like that, not like the AK-47, which is really, really too powerful, but still a very, very powerful weapon in this game. If you like the Fara 83, you're still going to like it in this particular patch. The next gun that we do have here is the FFAR 1. Now, this thing, as we have presented previously, is a very tough weapon to evaluate most of the time. It does have a very, very high fire rate, and as of the most recent patch, did actually get a nerf to its bullet velocity, but it did increase, I think, its damage slightly, like 1 point, which didn't really make too much difference. It's still the same amount of shots to kill. Has a relatively slow time to kill compared to some of the other tip-top meta weapons, and it's just like, why would you use this over something else? It does have pretty good hit detection. It does have a very high fire rate. It doesn't have that much damage, so the time to kill is a little wonky here. It struggles a little bit at range. The recoil is kind of hard to use, but up close, it does shred people. So this belongs in the situational tier. It's not actually terrible, but you can still get away with this sometimes in certain situations. But again, outside of those situations, it does struggle a lot. So situational is a perfect place for this, and it's not the worst, but it's definitely not the best here. Then we have the Groza, and I think this belongs in the meta kind of tier. Let's talk about the Groza here. Basically, this is a weapon that can struggle a little bit. The recoil is a little inconsistent. It's more like an S shape, which is kind of inconvenient with something like this. Mostly, you want the recoil to be straight up and down, maybe a little curve off to the right or the left or whatever, because those are usually quite easy to control. With the Groza, it sort of makes a little little ZS kind of pattern. It makes it really tough to control this thing when you don't really know exactly where the weapon's going to move and when it's going to move. And even with the recoil controlling attachments that you can put on this thing, it can still be tough to control the recoil. It does have relatively good damage range. I think the damage range goes out to like 65, 70 meters or so. But the time to kill is slightly slower than like the AK-47 and the Fara 83. And that's a little inconvenient for something like this. You can't get a consistent 300 millisecond time to kill in this game. You're definitely going to struggle a little bit, whether that be with headshots or of course just general body shots. It's a little bit of a struggle street with this weapon, but it is still very powerful. You do get a relatively fast time to kill. You do get good damage range. You can sort of bring in that recoil a little bit with some of these attachments, making it kind of easier to control, but again, it's still a little tough here. So the attachment setups are kind of wonky, but I still think this is a very good weapon in this game. So meta kind of tier is definitely appropriate for the Groza. The next weapon that we do have here is the Krig 6, and again, this did receive a pretty large buff here. I think this does a bullet velocity that is one of the highest in the game. I think it's about 1550 meters per second, which is absolutely ridiculous in terms of hit detection. That is basically as close to hit scan as you are going to get in this game with some assault rifles, hopefully. Like, if they do make assault rifles hit scan in this game, that's going to be absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, the thing with this weapon is that it doesn't really have that fast of a time to kill. It is very, very accurate, though. It's super easy to use. You don't have to worry about recoil with this thing. But again, it really doesn't bring the pain. In terms of that time to kill, it's definitely slower than the AK-47, definitely slower than the Fara 83. You aren't really going to get a 300 millisecond time to kill out to really any distance unless you throw in some headshots, and even then, it's a little tough here. This weapon is not super powerful, but again, it does have very, very easy to use recoil. It does have very good hit detection for, of course, that bullet velocity. But the good thing about these weapons and these lists here is this might be your favorite weapon. The Krig 6 might be absolutely your favorite weapon in the game, just because of how easy it is to use, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's why it definitely is a viable weapon. You can definitely get lots of kills with this thing. It's really easy to use, and it definitely has good stats at some places, but it can struggle a little bit at others. Good, but not bad here. Viable is perfect for this weapon. Next is the QBZ, the QBZ, whatever you want to call it here. This is a weapon that I don't really have a lot of experience with. This is a weapon that is kind of overlooked for the most part. Everyone just sort of looks at this thing and goes, oh, yeah, it is what it is. It's a fine weapon. It's very similar to the viable tier. It doesn't have great stats across the board. It doesn't really excel at anything. The recoil can be a little inconsistent, but for the most part, it's kind of easy to use as well. Definitely a little bit less easy to use than something like a Krig 6 when it's fully kitted out. But again, it is still a fine weapon in this game. You're not going to get your 300 millisecond time to kill. It's a little slower than that in terms of that TTK. But other than that, it's a fine weapon. There's not really much else to say about this thing. Again, I don't really have too much experience with the QBZ. I think mine's level like 6, which for a game that's been out for this long and me not having used the weapon at all, tells you how little hype there is around this thing. There's really nobody talking about the QBZ because it really doesn't do anything. This would be a weapon that I wouldn't mind seeing a couple of tuning knobs to, like twist those tuning knobs, make it a little bit more powerful, test out what people think about it, and give this thing a chance to shine. We would like to see some buffs here, but again, this is a weapon that you're going to get some kills with either way, regardless of what you do here. You're going to make an okay class setup regardless. So I think the viable tier is just one of those things where you got to put this thing in, and then you just sort of forget about it because it's not really a super relevant weapon in this game still. But again, you can get some kills with this thing. And again, this might be your favorite weapon in the game for whatever reason. And that's okay. That is good for you too, man. And then the last weapon that we do have here is, of course, the XM4, which is a very, very powerful weapon in this game. I don't think you can put together a decent 5 attachment class setup. So this isn't going to be like the tip top of the meta. But an 8 attachment class setup with this thing is going to be quite powerful. You're going to have pretty decent recoil. You're going to have pretty decent bullet velocity values. Again, this does sort of sit in the middle of some of these things. It doesn't have like the super fast TTK like the top 2 weapons that we have spoken about. It doesn't have the best recoil control like the Krig 6. Damage range is fine, but the recoil is it's okay. This is a weapon that definitely does compete though, as you get quite good stats here across the board. So again, meta kind of, this will sit into a similar tier as the Groza, as this is still a quite powerful weapon in this game. The XM4 definitely is some people's favorite weapon. You do see people running around with this thing pretty much all the time, and that is what it is, man. This thing is a good weapon in this game. 8 attachment class setups really do get the thing going, man. It's really, really strong still. But again, it's not the tip top of the meta. It's not absolutely broken like the AK-47. It's not really that strong. Doesn't have that 300 millisecond TTK like something like the Fara. So it can't really go any higher than meta kind of. But again, it can't really go any lower. It's not really just a viable weapon. It's a little bit better than that. And that's good for this thing. It did get buffed in the most recent patch, and that's always good to see here. So again, that wraps up our list here. If you do think you would change this, make sure you let me know. Leave a comment, do something like that, join the Discord, whatever you want to do. But again, I think this is a fairly good list here. The AK-47 probably needs to be brought back into line a little bit. It is definitely broken in my opinion with that super fast time to kill, good bullet velocity values, good recoil control. This thing is just too powerful. It probably needs to be brought back a little bit into line with the Fara 83, and then maybe we'll see a little bit more parity and a bit more assault rifle options, and maybe buff some of these worse weapons. I've been waiting for more FFAR 1 buffs since the game came out. Make this thing a little bit easier to use, maybe increase the damage numbers a little more. There's a lot we could do with this thing to make it a little bit better, but they just keep sort of tweaking values and being like, oh yeah, it'll be okay now. But it's just like, doesn't do enough damage, it's too hard to control, and it doesn't really do too much in terms of time to kill and all those other good things. But again, thank you very much for watching this one. I do massively appreciate it. Of course, make sure you do hit that subscribe button with those notifications turned on. I am looking for about 180 subs to hit 5,000, so if you could help me achieve that goal, that would be absolutely massive. And of course, I will see you in the next video. Bye!